We'll be going live in just a few seconds. Okay, I'm just getting everything ready. I apologise for the slight delay today. And here we go. Okay, well, good morning everyone. It's Keith here. It's 5 AM in Japan this morning, so I apologise if I'm talking a little bit quietly because I don't want to wake everyone up. But we're going to be doing a stream today. We're not going to be using the webcam though, so let's just turn that off there. Okay, what we're going to be doing this morning is we're going to be doing the same as last time we did the Amstrad CPC. We wrote that little joystick test. That was actually a weekend stream, but we're going to be converting that hopefully to the Spectrum today. Now, during the Saturday stream, I didn't actually manage to get the code completed. So very first of all, let's just have a look at the finished code as we're going to be using it. Now, eventually this will become a full tutorial with a sort of 10-minute video describing how it works as usual. So we're not going to go over the code today because, as I say, that's for a later lesson. And you can see now we've got that smiley face that we can move around the screen, and we've got some boundary checks to make sure it doesn't go off the screen. So, the idea is that if someone was writing a simple game and they just needed the ability to read user input and to actually, show their character on the screen, this would be a good example for them. And then hopefully, a programmer who's starting to learn things would be able to add maybe a second computer control player, or if they were writing a Pong game, they could write a second player by copying the first one, and then by mimicking the same code to make a ball, they could make a full-blown Pong game. That's the theory anyway. So this is what we're going to be doing today. So we've already got the CPC version here, and we're going to do a Spectrum version this morning, hopefully. So I'm just saving this here. Let me just have a look at. Morning, Rob. Very kind of you to drop in. I saw you commented on the previous video I did at the weekend. Very, very noble of you to try and watch any of it at all. I think it was about 3.5 hours in total. It was a bit of a monster stream, so I don't. Very surprised you're willing to grind through that. So very, very kind of you there. Hope it was some entertainment for you. So we're going to be working on Spectrum today. Still doing some work on the Spectrum Next. I'm sure you saw there was a video put on the patch-in yesterday, and I'm planning a sprite video as well on that. And then I think we'll be probably pausing the Spectrum for a little while because I've done all of the Spectrum Next for a little while, because I think I've done all of the things that I saw that were particularly interesting in it, and the platform is unfortunately still settling a little bit, that they're changing the functionality over time. So not quite sure, for example, on sound and things, but as I say, it's an interesting system we will be going back to. So anyway, let's close this down here, and let's open up CPC joystick here. Let's open that up. Okay, so we're going to need to copy, probably, let's think this through. Well, firstly we need our blank sprite, don't we? Let's copy that. Let's copy the blank sprite, and we need this as well. So obviously the sprite data is going to be different for the Spectrum. We only need 1 byte. So just take away the second byte here. Now, if you didn't see when we wrote this on the CPC, it's a very simple example, as you saw. And all we're going to be doing is we're just going to be copying a blank sprite over the existing one. I'm sorry, I'm about to sneeze, just excuse me. Sorry, there we go. Okay, so it's a very crude example, so we're really doing the most simple thing we can to get rid of the sprite. We're just clearing the sprite graphic by drawing a blank sprite graphic over the top. Now, if you were going to blank a part of the screen, really, you wouldn't want an area of your memory blank. But as I say, this is just, it gives us the ability to use the same data twice. So that's what we're doing here. As I say, a very crude example here. So if I just put this in here, now we're using BC here rather than, I just need to copy all of this over. So we're using D. Okay. Yeah, it's going to be quite different here, unfortunately. So we'll just rem this out for now. So we were doing a push of BC, calling the get screen pos function effectively, and then popping DE. So that will work okay. No, it won't work okay. Yeah, it needs to be HL now. It needs to be HL. So our B, I think, is okay. DE is going to be calculated by this get screen pos function here. Returns DE. Okay. So what do we need to do next then? So yeah, this is the fun of things. So will this work? I mean, it looks like it might. Let's try it out. So if we just put an infinite loop in here. Now, I did, usually speaking, I would try and make all of my functions on all of the systems use the same registers in the same way, where possible. But in this case, because these are really intended for people who aren't interested in multi-platform programming, they're only interested in one system. I did, in some cases, you know, like with this one, use, you know, where I was using the CPC firmware functions to do the job, I was using things as quickly as possible. Whereas with the I'm just changing the settings on my phone here so I can make sure I see all of the chat, not just the top chat, because that is a rather annoying limitation of some of these chat windows. Okay, and so sometimes I was using a function within the firmware which used a specific set of registers which wouldn't be my preference, and so we've got the Amstrad version working, unfortunately, slightly differently to the Spectrum version, which means I cannot copy my code exactly here. Let's compile this. I was a bit apprehensive about these. Okay, what's happened there? Doesn't look right, does it? I'm not sure what to make of that. Okay. I don't know what that means. Hang on a minute. Let's just test our Hello World example. Let's check it's not my emulators playing up here. Yeah, okay, it's my emulators playing. I think I know what the problem is. Okay. Yeah, this is a thing. I think the tape version will work okay. Hello World, yeah, there we go. What it is, I'm currently developing the Chibi Aliens game for the Spectrum, and the memory is so tight, starting at 8,000 is no longer acceptable. I'm starting at like 7,000 or something. So my development build environment now doesn't work for an example starting at 8,000, which is the last thing I wanted to do. I just had no choice, because, as I say, it was like, well, when I wrote the development environment starting at 8,000, I thought, well, let's keep things nice and neat. And then when I was working on the Chibi Aliens, it was like, well, you've just got to save everything. You've got to save every byte you can, because there's no spare memory. So that's why it wasn't compiling with my build environment on that disk machine. It will do fine on the download toolkit, because I haven't done anything like that on the other one. So blank sprite. I didn't see it flickering, but maybe it was just a screen interrupt thing. I was expecting it to flicker on and off very quickly. Spin that one out and just see if that works. So I'm just testing the graphics routines. Okay, so maybe it is. I'm just testing the graphics routines first, because if the graphics routines aren't working, we've got no chance. So what we can do here is do we need to protect BC for the get screen pause? I don't think we do there. Just for safety, let's put a push in for now, and we'll take it out later. So I don't think I actually need the get mem pause. I don't think that's actually going to affect BC, but just in case I'm missing something, I don't want to cause a bug there. So incidentally, I was hoping to do the it's coming out black there, so it's not what we want. Let's oh, that's just because we're doing the blank player there. Incidentally, I was hoping to it's colouring the wrong tile. Why is that colouring the wrong tile? It's because I'm using, oh, it's because, yeah, okay, I'm using the wrong, yeah, I see what I'm doing wrong here. I'm using BC, and this example is using DE, isn't it? It's using DE. Yeah, again, this is because I had to change everything because the registers were different. Okay, so we'll just change that there. Yeah, change that there. So, oh god, this is going to get a pain. Okay, so what are we going to do there then? So I either have to change this to use DE, or I have to change all of the other code to use BC. Well, I guess it would be unfair on the learners to make them use DE now when we used BC before. So I guess I'm going to have to change all of the rest of the code to match, aren't I? I guess that's what I'm going to have to do. So, okay, so if we push BC, pop BC, push BC. Okay, so what we want to do there here is we want to push HL, I guess. And pop HL, push HL, pop HL. And this is our source data, so these need to be HL here. I was hoping to play the floppy disk games on the Famicom, but my drive's belt is broken, and I had a go at fixing it yesterday, and it didn't go well. I put a new drive belt in it, and it worked, but the drive belt was the wrong shape, so it flipped, it like bounced off the belt because there's no retainer for the at the top, so it just slipped into the mechanism and jammed. So I tried a different one again, and it didn't work, and it was coming up with disk errors. So I'm going to try and get a better belt, but maybe I've damaged the drive mechanics, or maybe the alignment's gone. So I was hoping to play Doki Doki Panic and Super Mario The Lost Levels, or Super Mario 2 Japanese version, which you haven't done any assembly since the 80s. Well, I don't know what assembly you did in the 80s, Mage, because I didn't do any in the 80s, ironically. I was a kid, you know, so probably pretty obvious, but I was sort of, you know, I was born around 1980, so I did like literally one or two commands around the age of 12, like 91, and that was that was literally I poked into memory the commands for ink and saved to memory and things, and just called it from basic and felt satisfied. And then very late in the Amstrad CPC's life, because I was a CPC kid, they released a simple assembler on the cover tapes, or it was cover tapes, yeah. And they had an example for doing the raster screen color switching, where you change the colors in mode 1 multiple times per screen. And I typed all of that in and I tweaked it, and I had some fun with that. But I never did anything of this caliber back in there. Okay, right, okay, that makes more sense then. Okay, yeah. I was going to say, I would have liked to have done some better programming when I was younger, but I'm sort of... we're blessed nowadays by the documentation that's available. You know, you can get all of the documents for free, but for all of these systems. But back then, there's this hardware manual for the Amstrad that tells you what all of the system calls for the operating system do and things, and how the system works if you're still going to go more low level into assembly and things. But I never even saw that document. I wasn't even aware it existed, although to be fair, it was frequently mentioned in Amstrad Action, the magazine I used to read. But I guess I maybe didn't understand it. Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm 40, so yeah, okay. And I think the average age of the people using these old computers is around the sort of 40 to 60 range. Unfortunately, I don't think there's many who are younger at this time. I mean, I know there's one or two that are sort of picking it up secondhand and things, but I think mostly it's people our age who either grew up with it or started working with it. Yeah. Rust isn't one I'm familiar with. I was looking at some Ruby a while ago, but Rust isn't one I've come across yet. It's yeah, okay. Anyway, let's So if I just take this out now and compile again. Okay, so I think we're probably working okay here. So we've got our smiley face on the screen. It's not quite as fast compiling for the Spectrum because with the Amstrad, as I've said many times, I really think the Amstrad is a great development platform for beginners of assembly, because WinApe, you know, you've got no compilation to wait. You don't have to wait for anything. You can compile and run and crash your machine and compile and run and just keep doing that over and over again, and you're not losing any time or anything. But with the Spectrum, I'm having to wait for Spectrum emulators to start, and some of the larger emulators really take a long time. Your 9-year-old loves the Spectrum. That's great. Okay. I don't know. Python and BASIC, I mean, it's very difficult to judge. I mean, there's people saying that there's people who will insist C++ is obsolete now, and JavaScript was, you know, is it Go, the Google one that they say is better than JavaScript? So it's very difficult for me to... I find it very difficult to judge what language isn't or isn't worth learning these days. I mean, when I went to university, they taught us Pascal. I've never seen Pascal professionally in my life, you know. It's like, come on, guys. But, so I don't know what languages are or aren't worth learning, because, as I say, I think it's very difficult to make those kind of judgments. So this is going to be a bit more... I hadn't really thought this through. My previous example was using 2 bytes for each coordinate, because again, that's the way the firmware worked, but this is going to have to work with 1. So C#, Swift, and Legacy Delphi. Okay, honestly, I don't even know what Swift is. I apologize. C#, I don't use it professionally. I've used it personally though. My dev tool, all my development tools. I still use the old version, the Visual Studio 2008. I tend to use a Windows XP virtual machine with it installed, so that I have got it installed on this machine, but I like to sort of know that I can, you know, just keep it working. You know, they keep changing. I installed the latest version on a virtual machine at work, and it was enormous. It was about 8 gig, and it installed all kinds of crazy stuff that I just wanted C#. I don't want to develop for web applications. I don't want to develop for mobile phones. I just want to write a simple program that works in Windows. And really, just most of the programs I write, because I say I only do C# for fun. Mostly, it's just little programs to do very simple tasks, and I just want a GUI. It's not. It seems a bit excessive installing about many gigabytes of software, including programming languages I have no intention of programming, just to get C# working. So I do stick with the old 2008 version at the moment. But I'm sure the newer versions do have really impressive stuff included in them. I'm not denying that there will have been great improvements, but as I say, I'm happy with the old version, and I'm in the opinion of, if it's not broken, I won't fix it. So. I do have to say though, before I started working on this kind of thing, I did write a little study game, a Japanese study game in C#, which did allow me to appreciate the breadth of the commands that C# supports out of the box, because I added a lot of extra tools. Okay, well, I think spending too much time in playing bass and messing in Reaper is probably more of a viable use of your time than programming it anymore, in my opinion. The industry just seems to change so fast all the time. As I say, the programming languages I learned at university were useless by the time I got out of university, and I don't know if you guys remember, but I believe the first beta release of one of the more recent Visual Studios, the Community Edition, the free version, they took away the ability to develop desktop applications because they were trying to force everyone to what they called Metro at the time, or whatever they call it now. The modern applications, I think, is what they refer to it. And then they realised, oh God, and backtracked really fast. So hi Oleg, very kind of you to join us. It's I'm not sure what time of day it is in your neck of the woods. I say programming, I get some pleasure from it for fun, but the reason I program these really old systems now is because well, at least they're not going to change. And in this case, I'm just using Notepad++ and a command line assembler. It's like a 50k development environment almost. It's tiny and it doesn't need installing, and it's just far more. You can focus on the task at hand of actually developing, rather than worrying about whether your development environment so much. Yeah. Well, they did, and I mean, to be fair to them, Microsoft seem to be a lot fairer these days than they have been in previous years. But it's the once bitten twice shy thing. And as I say, my old Visual Studio 2008, there's nothing it doesn't do that I've ever wanted at this stage. And what I got distracted by what I was saying is my Japanese study game. I just started bolting more and more tools to it, and one of them is the I don't know if you've seen on my website or anything, I show that time chart with all of the different territories, and it shows the times of all of the different, it's this time in Japan, that's the equivalent of this time in the UK, and there's a time off. Well, that was all using the built-in Visual Studio Visual C# tools for internationalization. And you just thought, in most cases, I can, if I'm programming in native C and Linux, for example, most of the time I can program my own functions to do the dirty work that I need to get done. I mean, even I wrote a kanji drawing program in MS-DOS once that used line art. It was a vector function, and I wrote a function to convert the raster graphics to vector graphics and things. And so usually I can get things done very, very Visual Studio Code. Okay, yeah. I've heard that's very, very popular now, and there's the free development. You can download the kind of command line assembly tools, can't you, and things as well. And it's not something I've looked at yet. I always keep swearing I'm going to move to Linux one day, and I'm not doing a very good job of getting there, as you can see, because I bought this new Windows 10 machine. But yeah, it's something I'd be interested to look at. I mean, I did this Japanese study game I wrote. I did actually get it working in mono on Linux, and even on Mac OS it would run as well, I think, at the time. And in an ideal world, I'd be running on an open source. Even if I was still programming C#, I'd be trying to use an open source development environment, even if it was just Notepad++ and things. But it's just, it's the cutting off your nose to spite your face kind of a thing. At the end of the day, when I'm trying to write my graphics program with the Sprite editor for this tutorial, my priority really ought to be to write something that works, and not to refuse to use the free tools that are available that could get the job done a bit more quickly. So I've not looked at that kind of thing yet. There's that one that Mono developed for Linux, which is called Z80 Studio, which was quite interesting to me. I had a look at that, and I think that's what I was using to get the Japanese game running on Linux. But then I'm using Git on the command line, but I can't pretend to have any experience of it, Mage. I can kind of just about work it, but it's not pretty. I don't have a proper understanding of it. Let's put it that way. Yeah, as I said, but Microsoft and the Mono Develop and Z80 Studio, I believe, are the same thing, or mostly the same thing. But Mono Develop for Linux you can download and compile pretty easily, I believe, but they aren't releasing pre-compiled binaries for the Windows version, and it just seems an intentional effort to push people to the Visual Studio Kit instead. And it's just like, well, okay, I guess it's your barbecue, you can do what you want, but it feels to me like you're intentionally stopping people using the closer version to Mono Develop. And again, it's like, well, if you're really committed to the open source thing, then you should be worried about trying to make it as easy for people to use your tools as possible, and refusing to give out the compiled binaries for Windows is not normal for Windows. I mean, it's often normal for Linux, but it's not normal for Windows. So that was disappointing, and especially considering in a lot of ways Microsoft have been a much more friendly company to Linux recently. I mean, they're even doing crazy things like they ported SQL Server to Linux, didn't they, and things which, was gasps of disbelief at that one, which, as I say, it was certainly impressive. And there's now there's Linux command lines for Windows and things, which isn't something I've used. But again, it's like, well, this is no one would believe this kind of thing, back in the day. Everyone, this is the last thing that would ever happen. But as I say, unfortunately, while I do I've got a variety of old machines that I use Linux on for, web browsing and things, and I find it very comfortable in that situation. For a complex setup like this machine, where I've got 2 webcams and 2 video capture devices, and I'm using my Windows development tools, there was just no choice. And when it had to be connected to the internet as a requirement of actually, doing the live streaming, I had to use Windows 10 really, which was it's one of those ones where you swallow your pride and just do what's needed to get the job done. And as I say, in this case, the job was trying to stream to people to try and be a bit more engaging with the people who may be interested in developing. So that's what I did. So here we're reading in the input. So we're just going to disable this for now. I can press Control Q on Notepad++ and rem out an entire lot of lines. I don't believe there's any way to do that in WinApe, so it's a big relief. That's something that it sounds silly, but the number of times I've spent ages tabbing entire sections of code in WinApe, or commenting out sections of code because it doesn't have those commands. As I say, I strongly believe that WinApe is the best beginner platform for someone learning Z80 because of the embedding of the assembler and debugger in an emulator, but you know, for there are a lot of people who don't like it because there's weird limitations in the emulator or the debug or the assembler. I think ones like you press the escape key and weird characters appear, and you can't redefine the keyboard in some cases, and the joystick support's not great. But yeah, I understand. I don't disagree with any of those comments, but I don't believe I could have written the first game I wrote in anything except Win8 because I was making such enormous numbers of mistakes and just simply didn't understand what was going on. And it was the ability to compile and crash and compile and crash in seconds rather than minutes, and to be able to step through my code and see all of the symbols, you know, what the labels were in the debugger without any extra work. It was you know, that's what made it possible for me to write, you know, the original game. So so as I say, for me it just feels like, you know, that's what you need really, I think. So okay, so BBC, the BBC Micromage. I never had any of the Z80, the 6502 machines. You know, well, except the NES, of course, which isn't a programmable machine. I started on the Amstrad CPC, moved to a PCXT, and then obviously the PCs all the way down from there. So yeah, I never had the chance to use any of those. I've used the BBC Micro for development during my tutorials, of course. I do have to say it's I find it the most pleasant of the 6502 computers to use. I would possibly favour a system like the PC Engine, which I know it's not technically 6502, it's a 6280, but I'd probably prefer something like that if I was writing a game, just because it's such a powerful machine. But yeah, if I'm trying to write 6502 code and just test it out and get it working, the BBC is a very nice machine. It's a very nice graphics screen. I've been watching those Micro Live episodes of the old BBC series, and I think there's one where they've got Sinclair whining about the fact that his spectrums weren't selected and the BBC was, and it's just like, well, you know, let's be realistic here, guy. Look at the ZX81 and look at the Spectrum, and the Spectrum's okay. The early Spectrums aren't that bad, but then you look at the BBC, and the BBC's built like a tank, and in some of those episodes they're wiring crazy things to the ports on it, and you know, you just think, yeah, I don't think you're being entirely fair comparing the ZX Spectrum to the BBC. You know, they were different animals. The Spectrum was a very low cost machine, you know, designed for amateurs and gamers, and the BBC was, from my understanding of it, more designed for you know, people who were potentially going to be more like the Raspberry Pi, that maybe they were going to start hacking their own hardware, or at the very least, you know, doing some serious programming on it. I mean, the thing of connecting other processors to the BBC, that's crazy stuff. I've never tried it. I don't own a BBC. I've only used the emulators, but so reading up on that kind of thing, that's some impressive stuff there. Okay. So I've remmed out. This is going to read in from the keyboard on the Spectrum, and this is going to read in. This is going to check if the player's gone off the screen. So I've remmed that out for now. I just need to actually just start testing everything. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go to here, and I believe somewhere around here I have some code that reads in keys from the firmware. Here we go, last key. Firmware interrupt handler sets this to the last key press. So what we'll do is we will put this, check I'm working on the right code here. And we need to put this here. actually, that's a bit messy, isn't it? Let's put that straight in here in this case. Atari ST, Amiga. Did the Amiga not have MIDI ports then, Mage? I didn't know that. Its reputation is always for sort of being incredibly good musically, so I wasn't aware of that. Take that out. As a kid, I always wanted an Amiga, but it was really, my limited experience was just you saw the graphics of it, and at the time, they just blew everyone away. I mean, the Amiga looked like an arcade machine to our eyes, whereas the Amstrad CPC was obviously nowhere near of the same caliber, and the PC just at that time hadn't caught up. So it didn't. Oh, that's a surprise, because I say it's got such a reputation for the mod tracking and things that I'd sort of imagined that it would have it. But did the Amiga ever get them added in a later edition like the Amiga 2000 or anything, or was it just something that they never added at all? So it surprises me, because everyone knows the Amiga for its music, and to buy an extension. Okay. Okay, well, I didn't know that. I mean, people always make fun of the Atari ST because of its AY sound chip compared to the Amiga's sort of digital sound. But I mean, one thing I'd sort of say about the Atari ST is if I'm looking to play the old Amiga games just for a bit of nostalgia and run them on an emulator quickly, I usually end up playing the Atari ST version, because the Amiga emulators are so hard to configure and get working properly with games quickly. You can end up spending like 15 minutes just messing with the settings and things. So whereas the Atari ST seems to just be a totally, the emulators, at least, they just seem to just always work fine, and okay, you've not necessarily got quite as good music, but usually the graphics and the gameplay are the same, which is surprising because the hardware is quite different. Okay. Okay, oh yeah. I mean, the Amiga, as I say, the Amigas for me were legendary for the mod tracking, which, as you say, is sampling based. So yeah, that makes perfect sense. Okay. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is we're going to compare to, let's use I mean, this is always the one that starts wars, because do we use QAOP, WSAD, or ZXKM, or whatever the other one is? So we're gonna use A here. So we're loading in the last key here. We're comparing to A, and if A is pressed, then we're going to decrease C. That needs to be increase. Again, the Amstrad CPC firmware worked the opposite way around. Okay, what's happened then? Oh, sorry. My console window is over the top of my my stream monitor, so I missed it. Okay. Compare. Okay, I'm now putting 6502 commands in my Z80 because I program too many different languages all at the same time. There we go. Okay, it doesn't work at all. It's not very good, is it? So, loading X with B, loading Y with C, calling blank player. Okay, well that's not good. We want that there for starters. I don't know what you're laughing at, Rob. There's a bit of a delay. Maybe you're laughing at me putting the 6502 in there. It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. When I started doing this assembly thing, I thought at the time, okay, well, oh, it's moving. Oh, that's not so bad. Look at that. When I started this, as I say, it was a hobby, and I wanted something to, give me something to do in the evenings, and get a bit of pride in my self-achievement kind of thing. And my first thought was, right, well, CPC. I'm a CPC guy. I'll just do the CPC. And I wrote the Chibi Akima's game, which when I was writing it, I didn't think I'd even finish it. It was just like the crazy pipe dream kind of thing. And then I sort of finished it and I thought, okay. And then I did the sequel, and the sequel didn't really get anyone playing it, or no one seemed to really mention it. And I thought, okay, well, that's a shame. Okay. There's about a 30-second delay on these streams. There are some options for shorter latency, but testing it myself on the previous stream, there didn't seem to be any real difference. So maybe I need to start. Maybe I need to start trying them later on. We'll see how it goes. But yeah. I mean, the real killer with the assembly is the Z80. The source is on the right and the destination's on the left. So load C, B will load B into C. But in 68,000 and not so much 65, but 68,000, a lot of the other ones, it's the other way around. But then you get ones like SPC 700, the assembly for the Super Nintendo sound chip, which uses the Z80 syntax again. And you're just like, it's just, if everything was one way and the other thing was the exception, you would kind of learn to cope with that. Today I'm programming Z80, so I've got to use the exception kind of thing. But it's like half of them use the one way and the other half use the other way. It's like some kind of, it's like they're playing a trick on you. How can we make the programmer's lives hard today? Well, let's swap the syntax around for this one. But well, anyway, as I say, I was originally planning to just program games for the Amstrad CPC, but the community was too small, so you thought, well, okay, I have to expand out. So you thought, I'll try and program the MSX version. I'd looked at it before. Sorry, I was just trying to think what keys I was using there. I was going silent a moment there. So anyway, I thought, I'd looked at the MSX before and it just looked too much work. But then I thought, I've got to try and get some more people interested in my game. So I thought, well, I'll give it another go, and I'll try and make the MSX version and also the Spectrum, because if I'm going to do the MSX to try and increase the popularity of the game, then I might as well give the Spectrum a go, because it can't be much worse, and also it's the most popular system out there. So I thought, well, okay, I'll do that, and maybe I'll try this Enterprise thing as well, because I've heard it's very similar. But I'll stick to the Z80. That was what I was thinking at the time. Stick to the Z80. And then I started doing these kind of tutorials. They weren't like this originally. They were a bit different, but the theory stands. And then and the tutorials were massively more popular than the game was. It's like, so okay, this is interesting. And you sort of realised, I'm gonna. Okay, well, take. Enjoy your food then, I guess, mate. So take care. Thank you. Interesting. I'm not seeing that message on my chat window here on my computer screen. My phone has got a better update on the chat than my my screen here. Oh, is it the top? It's this top chat option, is it? Yeah. Okay. obviously something, for some reason, whatever you said there, Mage, has offended the top chat, and you're now only showing in live chat. I think mentioning that maybe the word predator is considered too offensive for the chat, and they are downvoting you there. Anyway, yeah, take care, Mage. Thank you for visiting. Okay. So yeah, anyway, so the tutorials were massively popular, far more than the game development, and I kind of thought, well, the Z80, I'm doing all these Z80 tutorials, but I'm going to run out of things I can teach at the rate I'm teaching it. And so I started thinking, well, you know, you're gonna have to skill up a bit. You know, you're gonna have to find something you can keep teaching. And so I started learning 6502, which was another thing. When I found out how fascinating Z80 was, and I thought, well, maybe I should learn other assemblies to see if they're as interesting. But I had a quick look, and you're just like, this is gonna drive me insane. You know, it's too much work. So I dismissed it. But then again, being as the the YouTube community were seeming to respond quite well to my Z80 tutorials, far better than I ever imagined, I sort of thought, well, you know, okay, well, I think you need to do this kind of thing if you're going to keep doing these tutorials, because you will run out of content too quickly otherwise. And so I started. Well, the keys are backwards, but you know, the theory stands. That's going up and down. Okay. Okay, so, you know, that's a thing. Now, the only thing I'm going to do, apart from... Why is this backwards? Okay, my 6 AM brain's obviously being a bit slow. I can't quite see why that's moving backwards there. Okay, well, we'll worry about that later. So anyway, we're moving around the screen now. One thing we need to do, though, is we want to make this move down, up and down by 8 rather than by 1. Okay, yeah, okay, it's not good. Yeah, because I'm changing A there, so that's not going to work. So let's back up A. What's going on? What have I done? It's going crazy. Okay, so that looks like it's working okay. They're going up and down in 8x8 chunks, and we're moving left and right in 8x8 chunks. Now, obviously, we'd need to clear the screen black just to make everything sort of sensible, but the problem we've got at the moment is if we go off the screen, everything goes weird. So that's what was happening before. So we don't want everything going weird, and if we went far enough off the screen, we'd probably trash our own code, which would be a bit surprising. We don't want to do that. So we need to put our boundary checks back in here, which is all of this code here. Now, our boundary checks are going to be a lot easier on the Speccy because we only have to worry about the 1 byte for each value, because before on the Amstrad CPC, because we were using those firmware functions, we were using 2 bytes for X and 2 bytes for Y. Now we're just using 1, so that'd be a lot nicer. The Chibi Akima's game was designed around the fact that all of the coordinates were going to be 1 byte, and I'd certainly recommend, if you're going to write a game, that you try and make your coordinates all use 1 byte, because it's faster, it's easier, and you save memory as well. If you're storing XY positions of all your enemies in a big data array, then that's going to start eating up your memory. So what we're doing here is we're checking if the X position has gone over 31. This will actually, if you think about it, because if we go below 0, we'll wrap around to 255. This actually checks if we've gone off the left hand side or the right hand side of the screen in one go, which is quite handy. And so here we need to check B, compare with and we need to compare with 192, I guess. Okay, I think that's okay. Yeah? And here we've got the reset, so we just need to just use A here. Oh, incidentally, I was looking at the C256 Phoenix machine in a previous one of these morning streams, and last time I looked at it, I was starting to have some success because I changed my assembler. There was still some issues though, because the code wasn't running properly, and that was just from me. I'd left an infinite loop in the code and not spotted it, and so that was okay. But I'm unable to at this time do any more with those tutorials, because as far as I can tell, there's actually a bug in the processor emulator. I was trying to do a 24-bit increment, which would increment 3 consecutive bytes when 1 byte overflowed, but it looks to me like when you do an increment of a 0-page entry, the 0 flag never gets set in the processor. And I've checked the documentation, and I've tried the same example on a Super Nintendo emulator, and it works fine on those, but stepping through the code in the debugger of Phoenix 256, that Z flag never gets set. So I've raised a bug report with the developers, just because I say, as far as I can tell, that's not correct. So I'm still planning on going back to the system, but it's a bit difficult. I could work around a bug like that, but it just feels a bit like, well, I think that needs fixing, Okay, I've done something wrong there. My boundary is way too low there. Have I got my X and Y coordinates wrong? Oh dear, that's not worked. Am I backwards with my coordinates here? B's X and C's Y, isn't it? Oh, yes they are, but that's not what I've done here. Bit stupid. Okay, so my up and down are backwards. When I didn't notice that before. So problem with programming at 5 AM, you're only half awake. Okay, anyway, that's pretty much working then. I think we're pretty much done here. So I just need to So there we go. I mean, I think we've actually done this now. I'll need to put some kind of clear screen function. I'll do an LDIR, I guess, just to start things up. But you know, we're done now, I think. So let's do that now. We want HL to be 4000. DE wants to be 4001. Now where's it go to? Is it 5? It's 5800, is it, for the screen, and 5B00 for the colours, I think, maybe. So I think I think 1800 minus 1. I think that will be enough to do it. We wouldn't be setting the color attribute. Okay, so that's just set it all to zeros. So if we do a LB HL comma HL comma A, and if we do LB A comma 255, there we go. That's what we want. So we've got our character moving around the screen now by cursor keys, and we've got our boundary checking is working okay. Not bad for an... Oh, can't I get to the far right of the screen there? I thought I was able to. Okay, so we just need to change our boundary check by 1 then. There we go. So that's done. So that was some Spectrum coding there. So that's gone pretty well. The Amstrad one didn't go well at all, so that went about as well as could be hoped, I think. I'm quite impressed with that. So let's save that. Let's close that. Oh, close that down. And I will load back up WinApe, and we'll try doing something else if you will indulge me. I don't know. Of course, if you've got other things to do, you're welcome to leave at any point. It's actually a national holiday in Japan here today, so I mean, the theory of these streams is that it would be before work, but I have no work today, so I'm not quite sure how long this will last. So, you know, if your time zone means you need to go to sleep, or if you're got other things to do, of course, just feel free to drop out. But I would probably be programming this stuff anyway, so it kind of makes very little difference to me if I stream it or if I don't. So okay, so what I was going to do now then, just for a bit of a bonus, is what I'm going to do is try another little program that I was toying with on the CPC. Thanks for joining me if you're signing out there, Rob. It's very kind of you. I hope you've found this amusing. Now, this is one that I'm not sure how this is going to go, but this is one I was sort of interested in trying out. Now, I don't know if you guys remember the, I think is it Ghosts and Goblins, the first game, or the original Bubble Bobble release, the one back in the 80s, 90s. These used a weird trick on the Amstrad CPC, which completely flew by me at the time. I knew of those games, and I owned the Bubble Bobble one, and I was quite a fan of it. But they used a trick where they essentially used the 16 color mode as a 4 color mode with 2 layers. So what they did is they split the 4 bits into 2, and then they defined the color palette in such a way that any of the permutations and combinations of the second set of bits being set and the first set of bits being set would look like the second bits, effectively meaning the second bits were a layer above the first layer. And I see that kind of fascinated me, because I'd never heard of that, never imagined that, and so I thought it would maybe be a bit of fun to try and mimic that and to try and do something in my tutorials. So that's what I'm planning to do today. So this would be something in the platform specific series, I think this tutorial would be, and what we're going to do is we're going to base it on, because it's a CPC only one, we'll base it on the simple bitmap example, but not the basic one. So we want bitmap advanced, so we're going to base it on this. Now the coding example here that I just showed you, where is it? Here it is. This was just doing some bit shifting, and it was just me experimenting with the colors to work out how it all worked. And essentially, if you've got the two layers, basically the bottom 2 bits here are the background layer, so colors 0, 1, 2 and 3 are background colors 1, 2 and 3, and then the top bit being set will mean the top nibble will effectively be the second layer, the foreground layer. And so any time that the top 2 bits are 1, then the color should appear to be color 1, although it will actually be colors 4, 5 and 6 and 2 and 3 and so on. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my example, CPC bitmap advanced. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a version of this code which can render a sprite either to what would be that background layer or what would be that foreground layer, so that we can overlay the two. Oh, sorry. You're only seeing every other message from me. What I've got is cheers, Mage, rule. Cool. Thanks, Keith. Been nice talking to everyone. To talk to everyone. I thought that meant you were signing out, and then I've got don't quite know what the criteria is. You're only seeing every other message from me, but I'm set to live chat now, so I should see everything really. I didn't. I've got all of my windows set to live chat, not just top chat. So I didn't think I should be. But as I say, I'm going to keep going. So if you have anything you want to say, feel free to say it. And if you just want to sit and listen, I'll just keep gibbering away as long as I've got things to gibber about, which is usually not a problem I have. Show layer 1. So we'll do a call to this and then a return. And we'll just save this as multi-layer. Probably get into doing some programming of a different processor later this afternoon. I think I'm feeling like a change. I was working on the Z80, on the 8086 tutorials and the ARM tutorials last year, but it's been a while since I've done that, and so maybe I'll do some more work on that. I think I need a change a little bit. Let me just expand my preview window here. Just checking what messages are appearing on the video stream. It looks the same as I can see on live chat though, I think. Anyway, okay. So as I say, we're going to do two. No, quite all right. I say, please speak out. I mean, in a lot of ways, these are still test streams because live streaming isn't the same as pre-recording things. You've got hardware differences. You've got like just the technicalities of YouTube, and you've got learning how to work with the people in the chat and things. So yeah, please speak up about everything, because it's what I'm trying to learn here. It's not I'm not learning to program today. I'm learning to live stream. So so please do raise anything, like if I'm missing your messages, or if I've forgotten to change the top chat to live chat, or if my microphone's muted, which is always the classic one that the people make as a mistake. So yeah, please do feel free to point out any silly mistakes I'm making, or anything that you don't quite understand. If I'm ignoring you, if you think I'm ignoring your messages and it's actually because my chat's not set up right, then please let me know. So Right, next line, B, 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 B. Okay. I do have a webcam set up. I am planning to eventually start using a webcam in these streams as well, but it's not something I'm ready for yet. Firstly, I'm having enough trouble. Yeah, I've actually braved to the extent of using the mute button on the microphone, which sounds ridiculous, but the first time I was terrified to press it in case it then muted and didn't unmute and my entire stream was silent or something silly. And there are some things you sort of need to. You need to sort of move in stages. I mean, one silly thing that I've got to watch is if I turn my webcam on after I've started the streaming software doesn't seem to notice the webcam has been turned on. It's like it's connected to the hardware, and if the hardware didn't exist, then it doesn't work. So there's a few gotchas and things that I'm still working out with the hardware setup I've already got, let alone adding more hardware and the complexity of, having to worry about if I'm coughing and having to worry about if I'm scratching my nose because I've now got a webcam as well. So it's just moving in stages and getting used to each stage before I make things harder for myself, really. So okay, so what we're doing here is we're loading. This one is going to show to the background layer, and this one is going to show to the foreground layer. That's my plan, and this is the bits that we need to work with here. So let's get this out of the way. And so we've got to code this up to only affect two of the bits. So God, look at this layout. Look at this layout of the bits here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I've just got to work out what my bit mask needs to be here. It's very, very confusing for me. Okay, so L. Oh, that's a good start. So R, L. I've done that backwards. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. That's not a good start. So those are the left and right, the bits that are making up the left and right pixels of the screen in mode 0. And then on top of that, and we do need to put our mode. Oh, we're doing that in basic. Okay, we'll do that basically. And then we need to add to that. We need to work out which bits are plane 1 and which bits are plane 2. So is that backwards? I'm just checking my paperwork here. I've got a printed paper document here. Okay, that's not very clear. I'm guessing that 0 and 4 are the low bits and 2 and 6 are the high bits, although it doesn't really make any sense either way, does it? Okay, well maybe not. So bit 7 is going to be plane 1 maybe. Bit 6 is going to be plane 1. Bits 5 and 4 will be plane 2. Okay, I think that's right. So we want to strip out alternate bits here. So what I want to do here is I want to make this overlay the original. So this one's going to use a bit mask of 1, 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 0. If it's wrong, I guess we can always just flip it the other way around. And then HL. So that's cleared out the bits that we want to over. That's the wrong way around. I want to do that for plane 2. So that's cleared out the bits that we don't want, that we want to keep from the other plane, and then we're loading in from DE, and we're doing another AND here of the opposite mask, and then we all in HL and we load back to HL. I think that's right. I think that's right. Oh, it's my Win8 window gone. Where's it gone? Oh, there it is. Okay, so there's our character there. That looks correct. It should look the same as it usually does in that case. But what we want to do next is do the same thing with layer 2, but in a slightly different position. So if we change this to 12, and this time we want to take this code here and put it in here, but we want to swap these bit combinations around the other way. So we're going to overlay and also what we need to do is we need to bit shift this by 2 to the left like this. So we're effectively converting our bitmap to right to the top 2 bits of the screen image, and that will allow us to overlay it into what is effectively the second layer if you're using this weird format here. So we'll copy this in here, and then if we compile this, here. Now I think that's what we expected to see, which I know at this point might seem a bit hard to believe, but I think that's actually what it's supposed to look like. What we need now is we need some color setting. I can't remember how to set colors in assembly. All my portable apps are complaining. They're all complaining. I'm blaming Windows 10 for this. Windows 10 has been doing some spontaneous installing of updates and seems to be a bit weird. I mean, to be honest, I don't know if... sorry, I should have muted the mic there. I don't know if Windows 10 has a nasty tendency to forcibly close applications when you shut it down quite aggressively. I've noticed this at work. You know, you tell the machine to shut down, and you think, well, hang on a minute, there was like a 4 gig virtual machine running there. You didn't seem to take a long time to save that to disk, kind of thing. You know, it seems like you've kind of forcibly quit that. Yeah. So I don't know if it's a bit aggressive with the way it shuts down applications that usually they would, you know, usually you'd get your "do you want to save your changes" kind of messages, and with Windows 10 maybe it forces them down a bit quicker. My home machine's Windows 7, my normal one. And my work machine used to be Windows 8, but I gave in and upgraded it when I replaced the SSD. It used to be a sort of conventional hard drive, and I converted it to an SSD, and that meant an OS reinstall, and it was kind of like, well, Windows, I was reasonably happy with Windows 8, but it was kind of like, well, I know there's the risk we're going to need to move to something like Adobe CC or something, and I don't believe you can even install it on anything below Windows 10, so it would have felt a bit foolish doing an OS reinstall to anything other than Windows 10 at that point, unfortunately. But as I say, it means basically that while my home and work machines are now Windows 10, or at least this home machine is, I don't have a lot of experience with it still from a user point of view. So anyway, we're going to look for this for palette. Color. Okay, this isn't going well. I've got a very crude list here, and let's see what setting BC32. Okay, set the color of a pen. If the value is displayed, a different color will alternately flash. Entry contains the pen number, B contains the first color, and C contains the second color. So I assume A is the accumulator then. Let's try it out. So load A with 0, load B with, these are software colors, are they, I guess? So color 0 again, and C with 0 as well, maybe. I've been doing some reconfiguring of this machine, but incidentally, if you're interested in, it keeps going off the screen there. If you're interested in sort of the technicalities of the live streaming, I've been doing some changes to this machine. I've now turned off the second screen. I'm running on my 4K monitor. The machine itself has a 3K internal display, but sending the video to both was heavily slowing down everything. So I've switched off the internal screen, and I'm now running at 4K screen size here, which means I had to reconfigure OBS Studio because you've kind of got this capture window here, and the capture window, when you change your screen resolution, doesn't map to the correct location. So you can see here I've got a display capture 4K and a display capture 3K option, just in case I need to stream from the laptop if I'm traveling, or if there's a problem with this main machine or something. That's kind of the theory of having the laptop, was, if my home internet goes down, then I can just drag it to work and stream from work or something. So, which I say is, we had a rather nasty incident a year ago in the area I live, where the power was down for a week nearly. I think it was 5 or 6 days, maybe it was a full week. I lose track. Anyway, it was like, you couldn't do anything. You couldn't, had no lights and no water, because the water's pumped in my apartment. So, but anyway, as I say, it was like, but work had power, and you just sort of, you started to get very tempted to go and sleep at work in a sleeping bag and just get on with all the stuff you wanted to do normally from work. And as I say, having this laptop pre-configured like this, that I can actually do all of my normal stuff without any real disruption, is really good, which is why I wanted a machine with a 3K internal display, because as I say, I certainly can't work at less than full HD, and I can't live stream with just full HD. So having a laptop with a sort of exceptional monitor was something quite good. But the processor, because it was a cheap laptop, the processor is not exceptional, quite certainly not. Anyway, BC32. I try and tell people a little bit about what things are going on with regards to my YouTube stuff and things, mainly because when I've been watching other people like EEV Blog, he often mentions how he finds working on YouTube from a technical point of view, or just from a sort of what problems he's having with the platform in general. And I find that quite interesting, not just to listen to, but also because there was a point where I hadn't even considered doing this myself. And if you're hearing from other people their experiences, what their hardware is, what their problems are, what the challenges they didn't expect are, then maybe if people decide to start going into it themselves, then maybe they can learn from my mistakes, or maybe having heard a little bit about it will give them some confidence to give it a go themselves. And even stuff like the live streaming, there's this whole other studio you end up in, this live streaming studio. let's just see it here, and you have to copy a stream key, and you copy it into a settings page, and then I'm being warned that my stream rate's low, and you can see the live preview here, and if I click that, it's all going to end very abruptly. So as I say, even though I'd been using YouTube for like nearly 2 years kind of thing, when you go into the live streaming thing, there's all of a sudden all these new weird and wonderful technical problems that you just didn't know. You think, oh, I'll just click a go live button and everything will work, and then you're like, no, you've got to use other software, and you're like, well, I don't know what software, and then you got to configure the software, and then you got to configure the interface, and so we got the screen going black there, so that looks like it's working. So as I say, there's a lot of unexpected things that that I didn't think were going to be issues that definitely are issues, you know. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to define a palette here, because it's going to take me a little bit of time maybe to get it working right. So I'm just going to create a little routine here that's going to load in 16 values from HL, and so we'll load B from HL, load C from HL. Maybe we don't need D at all. Load A with 0, inc HL. Call that. Now we need to check what. Oh, it's ruining all of our registers. It's ruining all of them. Okay, well that's so we need to do push AF pop AF pop HL. Push HL, and we need to do incat as well. Okay, so that's what we're doing there, and then we need to do CP16 and GRNZ palette again. I often tag things like again to the end of my labels. WinApe doesn't support local labels, I don't believe, and so I've come to never use them. So I know some people might. I know it would make more sense to use local labels, but to be honest, with the number of times I've had to change assemblers over the years, or whatever you want to call it, I'm tending to become a bit minimalist in what I try and rely on. You know, I have to use macros in some cases, but local labels I can very easily live without. And when you're converting a program from one assembly language to another, that's just a thing I'm quite grateful to not have to worry about whether the syntax is different or whether they simply don't exist in some assemblers, you know. So if we do this call now, it's going to go crazy because I've not got any data. So there we go. So something happened anyway, so it looks okay. Let's MC set mode. Let's do that as well. Sorry, I apologize. That's off your screen in MC set mode. So we'll put this right at the start here. So we don't want to be using basic for things. BD1C. Let's reset everything. Very slow there. So again, it's saying about hardware and things. It's very interesting just how the performance is on this, and I don't know to what extent it's the live streaming. The live streaming is reporting it's using 15% of the CPU power. It's using hardware acceleration as well, but that reset was very slow there. Very, very slow. I mean, even typing there is slow. What's going on? Okay. Anyway, so we've got the screen mode changing there now. Let's just leave that there. Get that out of the way. So what we need to do now is we need to set a palette up, and the first 4 colors are going to be the layer 1 colors, and then the next 4 colors are going to be color 1 of layer 2, and then next 4 color 2 of layer 2, and the next 4 will be color 3 of layer 2. So let's our first color will be 0. Our second color will be purple, so I think that's 5. Our third color will be bright blue, 14. Let's use 14. And white, is that 26? 26. Okay. I think that's not worked. It's not worked at all. What's going on there? Should we end this one out just a second? Okay. Am I supposed to be using hardware palette numbers? Let's try something out. Let's try putting 26 here. I'm now stuck with the situation of, is it my code doesn't work, or is it my sprite code doesn't work, or is it my palette code that doesn't work? Okay, well that worked okay. And now this is running nice and fast again, and it's because I've minimized the OBS Studio. So the OBS Studio preview window was using all of my CPU power. I had noticed it was, the bigger it gets, the slower the refresh of its own window gets, which made playing games on it a bit of a challenge, because I had to keep it quite small so that the gameplay would be fast enough that I could actually see what's going on, because I haven't got any kind of video splitter, so I was playing on the actual window. Okay, I'm not quite sure what's going on here. Well, anyway, let's carry on regardless for now. So those are the colours of the first layer, and the second layer I'm going to use a kind of reds, because we've got quite a few reds. So we'll use 3 for 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we'll use orange or bright red, I guess. 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we'll use orange. 15. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we'll use white. Well, we'll use yellow. 24. 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't get why that's blue. Why is that blue? Okay, take care, Rob. Thanks for sticking around so long. I hope this stream isn't too much of a hassle for you time-wise. It's you know, it's I think of 5 in the morning's about as early as I can get up, so I'm afraid I can't do a more convenient UK time stream. Very kind of you. Hope you enjoyed it in some way. I don't know if it's one you're watching just to learn something, or just to sort of hear what someone else is doing. Anyway, good night now. Okay. What I'll do, I'm going to separate these out a bit more. Call 1200. Okay, so we've got 2 characters there, and they're both completely the wrong colours. So what am I doing? I'm obviously doing something incredibly wrong here. So let's check that setting command again. Maybe these need to be hardware colours or something. Yep, take care now. Very kind of you to say so. Set the colours for all the pens in the border. Hang on a minute, am I using the wrong command? BC32. No, that's the wrong one. That's right. BC32. It. Oh, okay. Okay, no problem. Typo there. So I was wondering what you were saying there. Okay, BC32. Set ink sets the colour of a pen if two values are supplied. Contains the pen colour, contains the first colour, and C contains the second colour. What am I doing wrong? Obviously doing something wrong. Oh, what a stupid thing to do. That's outside of my loop. That's absurd. So no wonder things weren't working so good. I was getting junk. Yeah, okay. Teaching me a lesson there, wasn't it? Okay, so now we've got our characters in orange, but they're both the same colour. They're not supposed to be the same colour. Why are they both the same colour? So they're both the same. What's causing them to be both the same colour? Shouldn't be. Test sprite, show layer 1, show layer 2. Now the sprite itself is only a 4-colour sprite, which is why I'm bit shifting it here, and that I thought would be okay. Although let's try that one. That looks more like it. That looks a bit more like it. Yeah, I think that's right. I'm using the wrong sprite. I'm using the wrong sprite. This is a mode 1 sprite. I need a mode 0 version. I think I have one. Let's have a look. See what we got. So if we go to Z drive, and if we go to res CPC, no, we don't go there. Where is it? Res all sprites. Look how slow this is. This is streaming again. It's using up all the CPU power. This raw CPC 16. I think this will do it. Okay, why didn't that work? Need to have a closer look at that file, I think. Maybe it's not what I thought it was. Raw CPC 16, let's have a look. 576 bytes, that's pretty big. 576 bytes. Ah, okay. So yeah, I would. Okay, that looks right. That looks right. So we've got our Chibico on the left using the first 4 colours here, these 4, and then we've got our Chibico on the right, which will be using this colour, and this colour, and that's because I've mapped all of those colours to this kind of orangey palette over here, although I was expecting some yellow in there. Am I getting? Have I added too many colours here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've added too many colours. Very silly. Okay. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So that's my palette. And now what we want to do is we want to see if this layering trick works. Because if I overlay the 2, we should see the orange one over the top of the bottom one. Okay, so let's try that now. So if I change this to 12, okay, that was a bit over, a bit too much there. So let's say 14. And there we go. I think that has worked. So you can see that now the orange layer is above the sort of white purple layer, and that's, I mean, that's not particularly interesting, really. I mean, I know it's not. It doesn't really look like we've done anything particularly useful. But what we can do with this is we can actually, if we create a blank sprite, and we just do DS576 was the file size, then what we can do here is we can now remove the second layer and the first layer will still be there. I'm using the term layer, it's a software layer, of course. Actually, let's just copy this pause routine out from here. Let's have that pause routine rather than using interrupts has caught me out before, so let's use a pause here. And then what we'll do this time is we'll load this same set of values in here. What did I call that second sprite? So blank sprite here. If I compile this, what happened there? My pause was too short, I guess. Where's my window gone? Ah, dear. There we go. It's still very fast. It's one of these times where you wish the CPU is a little bit slow, maybe. Well, 4 megahertz is quite a lot when you when it's working against you. You know, you think, oh, 4 megahertz isn't very much, and then there's a bug in your code and you can't find it, and you realise 4 megahertz means, you know, from 4 million calculations a second, and you suddenly when you think about how many lines of code you might have to go through to find the bug, it suddenly seems an awful lot, you know. So there we go. You can see there. Let's run it again. So we're writing the 2 layers and then we're removing the second layer. And once we've removed the second layer, the first layer is completely intact. So we've got the ability to do that. And we can also, of course, remove the first layer in the same way. There's no reason why we need to just do the second layer. Cool. And we can equally remove the first layer as well. And that's, I mean, it's only a very crude example here, and I'll maybe try and do some sort of, you know, sprite scrolling across the screen example instead. But the point is that by doing this, splitting the bits of the screen mode up into 2 and using them as 4 2-color layers, by, you know, this trick of setting most of the colors to the same values, we can effectively have a background and a foreground, and then we can use the background for our you know, level data, shall we say. If you're thinking your bubble, you'd have your sort of tiles there and your some background graphics, and then your foreground can be for the sprites. And when you need to move a sprite on the screen, you don't need to redraw the background. You can just clear the bits that layer are using and leave the other bits of the background layer unaffected. And that means you can, you know, you don't need to do your redrawing of the background, and you don't necessarily need your second screen buffer to be able to have a complex background and have the sprites overlaid and then remove them. So as I say, I kind of get the impression it's a sort of technique that is shunned by the community, because it's kind of like, well, yeah, you're using a 16 color mode is almost as a 4 color mode, although actually technically it's 8 colors, because you've got 4 colors for your background layer and 4 for your foreground. But as I say, for me, I was quite impressed by it, because having used this, having used the CPC since the age of about 5, for me to come across something in my my mid-30s that I'd never realized was a thing of the CPC, and was a clever trick for using the CPC hardware in a way that kind of it wasn't designed for. I thought that was worthy of some attention, so I thought I'd make this little tutorial here just to have some fun with it. What I'm going to do when I get the final example working as well is I think we should be able to use this for some 3D in the you know, your anaglyph glasses, the red cyan glasses, or the green magenta glasses, I think was one they did as well. I've always been quite fond of those, and we should be able to use this code to do that if we just reconfigure the colors in a different way, so that the overlapping colors, instead of being color 2, are actually the sort of grayscale, and the unlapped colors of colors 1. So these colors would be red, for example, and these colors would be like cyans. Then we should be able to use those 3D glasses, and we should be able to like draw our Chibico character overlaid like this and have it at different 3D layers. So I thought that might be quite fun as well, because as I say, I do rather enjoy the 3D glasses. It gives me a bit of amusement. So as I say, I'm going to work on this a little bit more and make a nicer example of the layering in effect than you're seeing here, and also say this 3D one, which I think will be a bit of fun, at least for me, if no one else. Which if I'm the only person who enjoys it, then so be it. Okay, so I think I'm going to call this time on this stream then. I mean, as I say, ironically, I could actually stream all morning, but I think I will be pushing my luck, shall we say, because I hadn't done any work on the Spectrum example before the lesson today, before the stream today, and I wasn't really sure it would work properly, and it worked fine. And also that one, I was that was one I wasn't willing to do on stream originally, because I thought it was going to be a disaster, and it's actually worked fine as well. So I'm kind of pushing my luck, I think. So I think we'll be calling it a day now. I'm really appreciate everyone who's been watching this. I hope it was of some kind of interest to you. I'm never quite. I kind of suspect a lot of you are as good, if not better, programmers than I am. So I'm always very amazed that people are willing to watch me bumble along in my programming and rambling along. So really appreciate everyone for doing that. Thanks for watching today. You will of course see all of these videos again, these source codes again, sorry. They will be part of proper tutorials with have much more heavily edited examples later on, so you'll be able to get the source code. If you're for some reason crazy enthusiastic, just drop me an email and I'll give you the source code before then, or PM message me on Patreon or whatever, Twitter, whatever you prefer, and I'll get, if you were really eager for it, I'll get you the code earlier. Anyway, take care now. I hope you have a good day, afternoon or evening, just depending on what time zone you're in. Goodbye.